10 facts about Jujutsu Kaisen that I guarantee you didn't know. Number 1. Megumi's grandfather was the former leader of the Zenin clan. In volume 17, we got this official diagram of the Zenin family tree, and it revealed that the previous head of the family was Toji's dad, meaning that he was also Fushiguro's granddad. What makes this fact even more interesting is that it's highly likely that Grandpa also possessed the 10 Shadows technique. There are two main reasons why I'm sure about this. The first is that during this flashback, it was implied that when Megumi was born, his grandfather was already dead. We know this because the new head of the clan was Naobito, meaning that at this point in the timeline, no one in the Zenin family had the 10 Shadows. That's why in chapter 113, Naobito was so interested in Megumi's potential, because as the direct descendant of the last 10 Shadows user, there was a realistic chance that he'd inherit the technique. The second reason why Grandpa had the 10 Shadows is that when it comes to the big 3 clans, they always want their leader to be someone who has the family curse technique. An example is how the Kamo clan wanted Noritoshi to be the next head, even though his mother was a mistress, and it's also like how Naobito wanted Megumi to be the next leader of the Zenin, even though he's literally had nothing to do with them his whole life. According to the author, the Gojo clan is the same, in that they choose their leader purely based on who was born with the 6 size or the limitless curse technique. So bearing all this in mind, it's likely that Naobito's predecessor must have had the 10 Shadows, which is where Megumi gets it from. Number 2. Nonami was originally supposed to be a villain. In an interview in 2021, Gege revealed that his original plan was for Nonami to be a bad guy who worked for a shady company and then one day loses his mind and kills everyone there. After that, he was supposed to follow a group of evil sorcerers and face off against Yuji, but later down the line they were meant to become friends. This fact is amazing simply because it's so easy to imagine it, because Nonami even said himself, the corporate world is crap and Jujutsu sorcerers are also crap, so as a villain, it'd make sense to see him literally attacking both groups. Number 3. During the Shibuya arc, Luffy from One Piece made a brief cameo. In chapter 83, there was a scene where Gojo was trying to figure out what the villains were up to, and he flies over a crowd of people who were dressed for Halloween. In that crowd is this one person who's wearing a straw hat that seems to also have the same hair as Luffy, which makes you wonder, is this just a really good cosplayer, or is Gear 5 so overpowered that he can now just travel between different series? Number 4. In volume 13 of Jujutsu Kaisen, Gege explained the full story of Playful Cloud. In case you don't know, Playful Cloud is a special grade curse tool and it's been passed around more than any other weapon. The first person to have it was Toji Fushiguro, and he stored it inside this cursed spirit that he carried around with him. Following Toji's death, Geto then took control of the spirit by using his curse technique, and in the process, Playful Cloud became his. In the JJK movie, he whips it out during his fight against Yuta, and after he loses, Gojo takes the weapon back. However, the Zenin clan argued that since Toji was the original owner, the weapon technically belongs to them, and so Gojo used his influence to make sure Maki was allowed to have it. In the Goodwill event, Megumi then stores it inside his shadow, having no idea that it used to belong to his dad, and he and Maki then use it to fight against Hanami. Todo then has a go using it after them, and things then come full circle when Toji's soul uses it for the last time. Number 5. Tangen is by far the oldest sorcerer in Jujutsu Kaisen, but did you know that this is what she originally looked like? Although her curse technique makes her immortal, she still goes through the aging process, and so every 500 years she needs to reset by absorbing another person. In one chapter we saw that there were at least 3 previous vessels, meaning by default Tangen has to be at least 1500 years old. Number 6. When Gege originally began writing this series, he never expected to continue beyond the events of Volume 0. As far as he was concerned, the story ended with Rika's curse being broken, and his plan was to start writing a new manga about a Japanese idol. That being said, when the chapters turned out to be more popular than expected, his editor advised him to keep expanding the JJK universe. This helps to explain why concepts like domain expansion weren't included in the climax of Volume 0, because Gege generally hadn't thought of it yet. Number 7. Back in the Shibuya arc, Kenjaku tricked everyone by secretly using his gravity manipulation. As we now know, Kenjaku has the power to mess with gravity, which is a curse technique that he stole from Yuji's mother. During the Shibuya arc though, we had no idea that he had gravity related powers, and so when the prison world was forcefully slammed into the ground, there was no reason to suspect that Kenjaku was secretly responsible. Now, you might then be wondering why he'd do something like this in the first place, and the answer is that it gave him the excuse he needed to separate himself from the rest of the group. Remember, at this time, Mahito and Jogo wanted to chase after Yuji for their own reasons, but Kenjaku didn't want to go with them. In his mind, he was planning to betray the cursed spirits later that same day, and so he wanted them to fight Yuji alone so that they would grow in strength before he takes control of them using curse spirit manipulation. To put it another way, Kenjaku believed that separating himself from the group had the potential to make himself even more powerful in the future. However, obviously he needed a good excuse for why he's staying behind, which is why he activated his gravity on the prison realm and then acted like he couldn't leave the area. In chapter 93, you even notice that in this panel, Mihito becomes suspicious of him for the first time, and it's cause Kenjaku is lying to their faces and trying to trick them. Anyhow, fact number 8 is that back in the day when Gojo and Geto were students, Toji tells Geto to thank his parents for giving him such a great technique. The reason this line about thanking his parents was so ironic is because when Geto turns to the dark side later on, his parents were some of the first people he killed. Number 9, you might have noticed that in the Jujutsu Kaisen prequel, Gojo was wearing bandages around his eyes instead of the blindfold that he has in season 1. According to Gege, the reason for this change is that it's hard to draw bandages every week, especially compared to the simple design of the black blindfold. On top of that, when writing the prequel series, he didn't really have a clear idea on how Gojo's powers worked, but when the series unexpectedly became popular, he was forced to do more research about the concept of infinity. Finally, fact number 10 is that in the first chapter, there was a subtle hint that Yuji is a death painting. In case you're not sure what that is, the death paintings are a group of people who are both half human and half cursed spirit. The first death paintings were created by Kenjaku 150 years ago, but Yuji is basically the new and improved version, which is what made him the perfect vessel for suppressing Sukuna's soul. At this point, certain characters in the manga have outright confirmed that Yuji is related to the death paintings, meaning he is definitely part curse. Now, if we flash back to chapter 1, notice how Megumi explains that curses will be attracted to the Sukuna finger that was hidden at Yuji's school. At the time, it didn't really seem that important, but now that we know that Yuji is a curse himself, it makes perfect sense why he was the one to find Sukuna's finger before anyone else. The finger attracted him to it just like a cursed spirit, and it's why Itadori felt compelled to take the box in the first place, despite not knowing what was even inside. With that said, those were 10 facts from Jujutsu Kaisen that you probably didn't already know. Let me know in the comments which one was your favorite, or if I've missed anything that you think should have been included. If you enjoyed this video, then I'd really appreciate if you sub so you don't miss future content like this, and hit that like button as it does help out with the algorithm. Until the next one, peace out.